Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll get started in a few minutes. Good morning, buenos dias. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining this talk. And I think it's 10:15, so we can get started. I am Vanessa Bermudez. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of California Irvine in the education department. And I'm thrilled to share with you all today about the projects that I have been doing in collaboration with my advisor, Andres Bustamante, and other collaborators as well at UCI. And here we have been really designing games to support early math development in Latine children in the community of Santa Ana. And this work is in partnership with the Santa Ana Early Learning Institute, as well as the Santa Ana Unified School District. And we have been thinking about designing these games in ways that are meaningful to students and they're aligned with their interests as well as with their experiences of them families. Awesome. So so just to get started in today's presentation, I will be sharing about playful learning, how we conceptualize play as part of the Playful Learning Landscapes initiative, as well as the benefits of play that go beyond learning, really related to motivation and engagement, and which designs principles we can use to create these playful learning experiences for young children. So I'll be also giving two examples of the work that we have been doing in Santa Ana. The first one, really designing STEM games for public spaces, such as bus stops, grocery stores, parks, and how we have been doing this in collaboration with Latino parents and families. And the second example is from our work with Latino teachers designing math schoolyard games. And I'll also talk a little more about the use of number lines. And the number line is embedded in the math schoolyard games that we're designing with teachers, and why our focus on that, as well as other research and examples from other researchers that have used linear number board games and other math games in early childhood educations, all to give you ideas as how might you be able to use them maybe in your classroom, in your home, or also as part of your own research. And really, we have some guiding principles, questions, and tools for you to use that you might be able to use it when thinking about your own and creating your own playful learning experiences for young children. And so I have a question here that is, what is play? And just want to take a few seconds, maybe, if few seconds for you to think about it. You can write it on the chat if you want to, you don't have to, but what does play mean to you? Awesome. I see a lot of comments about how children learn, providing learning activities with their senses, making it fun, engaging, right? And in terms of like examples of how that might look like, we might have some like board games, right? Maybe sports that need to follow certain rules. That is also part of play, but maybe siblings playing together with some blocks, or maybe a child playing with some rocks. It really can look very different, but all of it is associated with learning here about different concepts, as well as this positive affect. It's really fun and engaging. Children are intrinsically motivated to play, but the definition itself can be very broad. Yes, I see trial and error as well. And instead of thinking of something that's being play or not play, we think about play as part of the Playful Learning Landscapes and the work of Sosh and Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, Roberta Galinkoff, and others, as well as being a spectrum where we have free play on one end. This tends to be more solo, kids initiate and also direct activity. And we have direct instruction on the other end. And in direct instruction, typically an adult, maybe a teacher, initiates, or a parent as well, initiates and directs the activity. So it's not child directed. But we have a lot of things in between. We can have guided play that tends to be scaffolded by a parent or an adult, really helping with learning, including explicit learning goals into the process of play. And we can also have some games. These are considered subset of guided play, but tends to be more structured because they typically have rules that need to be followed within the parameters of the explicit learning goals. And there's playful instruction as well that is initiated by the adult and also directed by adult, but includes a more playful component to it than direct instruction. But we can see, and these are just some sort of the broader categories, but it's a broad spectrum that has many parts to it. And what we focus on really in our work, in our research, is this part here, guided play and games. And this there's some evidence showing that might be more conducive for learning content because it really provides guidance by adults, and it also incorporates explicit learning goals compared to maybe solo for play, and then still following the child's interest. And play boosts learning, but it also boosts motivation. So there's a lot of benefits. And we know that adult guided play and rule-based games enhance children's math skills in preschool and the early school years, which are so fundamental for later school achievement related to math and more broadly. But it can also help instill positive values towards math. So really thinking about how play connects, helps children connect math to their everyday experiences. It can also help them appraise math as being enjoyable and also reduce negative emotions when doing math. There's some research showing that, some even young children might start experiencing some anxiety when engaging in math. So really, how do we go away from having those negative emotions and seeing it more as enjoyable, and play can really help with that. And helping instill these positive values can really help with motivation to engage in math, which then helps with learning and so on. It's a cyclical relationship between math, learning, and motivation. So here, as part of the Playful Learning Landscapes, and what we're learning is that there's what we consider the best, as part of the Playful Learning Landscape, consider the best formula for optimized learning. And our first part is how children learn. We know based on years of research that experiences that are actively engaging rather than passive, we can think of this as being hands-on and minds-on, and also kids paying attention and involved in the task rather than being distracted. It's more likely to conduce to learning, as well as being meaningful rather than disconnected from a child's experience and interest. And they also learn best when learning occurs in socially interactive environments. So collaborating and communicating with others rather than doing more solo work. And when the experiences are iterative, that means that they're not repetitive, and children can test and try out different hypotheses, revise based on those, what they're learning and what they're finding, and also really helping think about problems and solving problems in multiple ways. And also, this should be joyful rather than boring. And really, we know that positive emotions are tied to creativity and flexible thinking as well. In the second part of our equation here, we have what children learn. So we have content being one of those areas. It could be math, but it could also be some other STEM content area. And but and really thinking about your learning goals. What are those learning goals that you want to create for the children? But it also really promotes this characteristics. You can see the link between the characteristics of the environments and what children are learning. A lot of other good skills that we want kids to be acquiring, including critical thinking, creativity, confidence, really persisting even if they fail, not being discouraged by failure. That's collaboration and communication with others as well. And the third part, which is equally important, is the community engagement. So really thinking about what community, who are the families that you're working with. And this can be done in multiple ways. Maybe one way is involving community members in the design of playful learning activities, receiving their input about what kind of interactions they consider important for their children. And we really want to be intentional about thinking and building from the existing practices of families so that we can then create what we consider more meaningful experiences for the children. So I'm gonna present on two examples of how we have done that for playful learning here in Santa Ana, collaboration with the UCI, and of course, with SAILI and with SAUSD, the Santa Ana Unified School District. And one way has been by creating the math and science games for public spaces with Latine parents and families. And then the second way, creating math schoolyard games with Latine teachers from the district. And go a little bit more deep into this, talking about the process, the insights that we have learned through it, and some suggestions as to how you may modify some of those findings for your own context. First, creating math and science games for public spaces in collaboration with Latine parents and families. So really, this work comes from thinking about redesigning community spaces. And this project, it's motivated by work in other cities, such as Philadelphia and Chicago, where researchers have thought about how can we redesign these physical spaces to be more child and family-centered and promote play and learning at the same time. For example, redesigning bus stops to include puzzles and games that promote storytelling or executive function skills, or adding science to grocery stores to promote child-adult conversations that focus on math and science practices. Or we might think about what can kids be doing related to this math and science at the laundromat or maybe at the park. And this work really builds also from the knowledge that children spend about 80% of the time outside of school. So really a lot of time, there could be a lot of more opportunities happening in those spaces. And we can think of these installations as being some sort of museum exhibits that are being put out in the community to be more accessible to families and to bring those playful and learning opportunities to the everyday spaces that families are visiting. So in our collaboration with parents from Santa Ana Early Learning Initiative, it's an organization that focuses on early learning for children 0 to 8. And it's really has multiple goals attached to it, and to generational model as well, working with parents and children. But we have worked and done virtual co-design sessions and interviews with about 32 parents. And this has included a variety of different activities, including what we consider storytelling and value mapping activities, where we learn more about, for example, how the parents themselves, maybe when they were in a different country, what were their experiences going grocery shopping, and what are their experiences grocery shopping now here in the US with their own children. So we're learning a lot about what are the practices that they're already doing that includes this rich math and science learning. And also then they are being designers themselves. We use crafts and arts to create models and to co-design what could these spaces look like, and putting in their direct input and their ideas, and then we work together to refine those. So when we do this, we are guided by these principles. We talk about the playful learning design principles in terms of the characteristics of the environment, and then together we decide what are the community values that we cared about and that we wanted to be reflected in these installations. And we also think about what are the learning goals. In this case, we are including the early STEM practices and concepts. such as making observations and projections, asking questions, and a few other ones. But we have a couple of different components and really thinking about the combination of all of them coming together and designing for these different community spaces in this specific project. From there, we have then gone into play testing in person and refinement of those ideas. So for example, yes, we use put our live mock-ups of the designs that we have created together and have them tested and then provide feedback, and we continue to refine on those. And way I understand this is an approach that is time intensive, and you might not be able to engage families in this way, or the research as well. We have learned a lot from families, and we have some insights and strategies to share that I think might be helpful with you in other early childhood education contexts. So for example, some of the most prominent practices that support early math and science learning in Latine families, based on what we're hearing from them, that there are several of them and they're rich, and thinking about also sharing the designs that have come out of this process. There's several I'll be sharing too today, and some ideas and suggestions as to how to adapt them into other ECE contexts, as well as strategies for learning more about children and their families to create more meaningful, playful experiences. So thinking about the practices of Latine families, what we have learned, and yes, I see a comment that the slides are linked under the resources if you would like to follow that way too. And what we have learned from families is that with their children, they engage and they really have them be part of food practices, such as having dinner together and really, or meals being a central part of that communication and that interaction, as well as cooking together and going to the store to shop for groceries together. And through that, they engage in practices such as counting food items, comparing food quantities, using food items to learn about shapes, planning meals, and making predictions about how much they need to use from different ingredients in terms of the quantities, comparing and adding the cost of food items, as well as budgeting what is within their own budget. And playing games, also another form that they are interacting and really thinking about those number games that help with one-to-one correspondence, the recognition of numbers, counting and adding as well, and understanding different patterns. And another kind of prominent practice that has come out is doing outdoor activities together, going for walks, for running, spending time outside playing. And through that, they're making observations a lot about what is under surroundings, looking for specific objects as well, counting steps or objects too, and measuring distance or time. And some of the designs thinking about these practices, plus the designs that parents created themselves, have led to our own designs for, or co-created designs for the public spaces that we're going to be installing in Santa Ana. And one of them is what we call the How Tall Am I design. And this is a 3D design that is going to be full size and is currently under fabrication. And this design came from family stories of caring for their community and wanting to create some sort of scale or measurement tool to collect and weight. In this case was trash, so really thinking about measurement and also like in terms of community, but they also were talking about seeing animals as a fun and engaging way for children to learn through. So this is a combination of those two things. And they provided input into what kind of animals they wanted to see represented, specifically those that were in Santa Ana and more broadly in California. So through here, children and their family members can measure their height, can look at their height, engage in the practice of measurement and identification of numbers. They can compare their own heights or against the height of different animals to who's taller, who is shorter. On the other side of this, the ruler is horizontal. So instead of focusing on height, they can also focus on the width. And in this way, also including math language. And you might be able to see that the animals are also drawn out of shapes for children to be able to find them. So how might you create a playful measurement activity in your classroom or at home? So in playtesting, we use a projector to project different animals onto a wall for kids. and they were comparing their heights against them. So that was a tool. In this case, we couldn't create the full design, so we used the projector instead. But you can also use rulers for children to find objects of varying or equal sizes. Think about the unit of measurement. Families talk about different measurement systems. So here we have inches and foot, but as well feet, as well as the centimeters. So you might think as also using some other objects for the unit of measurement. And this is one of the designs that came from that process. Another design is thinking about the grocery store and signs for the grocery store. So this sign here came from a family story of immigrating from Mexico and ordering meat at the grocery store. And then they order a pound and thinking it will be the same as a kilo, and then getting about half of what they were expecting. So we focus on having both units and seeing the equivalences between them. And this would go under the scale on the produce area. But also thinking, we added the component of predicting the weight. What do you think would be the weight? And then comparing and calculating the differences from the prediction and the actual weight, which were also practices families told us they engaged in. And this sign here comes from families sharing stories about going to the grocery store and teaching the children how to find the best produce. For example, if they were looking for avocados and they were going to eat them soon, then you looking for darker avocados versus looking for greener avocados if they were going to eat them in a few days later. So this sign really encourages families to share tips, parents on how to find the best produce using all of their senses, and engaging children in making observations, potentially asking questions and construction explanations as to how the appearance of the produce relates to the taste, all which are early science practices, but at the same time is rooted in the stories of families and is rooted in the expertise of parents who have this knowledge to share with their children. And in thinking about how might you create a similar playful activity, we send small scales when we're doing the play testing to families and printed a version of the signs to engage in the activity at home, which worked really well. And you might also be able to do something similar or bring in some fruit and for really that is familiar to children to explore with all of their senses, being guided by this kind of sharing of expertise approach. And some strategies for learning more about families based on what we have done and also the work of others. It's just more in general, we have done a lot of storytelling activities. We find that parents really love telling their stories, and that's something that then they can connect to the creation of the playful activities themselves, but also us when we learn more about them. And we also do value mapping activities. So for example, sometimes we share photos, they share photos about them just engaging in outdoor spaces, and then they talk about why those are important to them. So we can get more into what is valuable for them. And we also focus on interviews and focus groups, of course, to more directly ask and engaging them in the co-creation of those learning tools and experiences. It's really them being part of it. And it has led to wonderful designs. But also really thinking maybe more specifically for educators, thinking how to gather that information might include a question of the day, when parents are dropping off kids to learn more about what they're doing at home or just about the families and their interest, joint activities with parents, discussions, or bringing in parents to the classroom to share about their profession or just imparting their knowledge. Neighborhood walks to learn more about the community and what is happening around, and then building from that and really using that information to inform the curriculum or this case, the playful activities, as well as home to school sheets. So really, these are just some ways based on how can we learn more about families and based on children's, and then create the playful activities based on their interests and their family practices, which is that third component of our equation, which is the community engagement. And what are they already doing that we can build from? And this is something that is going to be specific to your setting and the families you're working with. I'll stop. I think I can take maybe one or two questions if anyone has any questions about that project before I move on to the second example. And I'm monitoring the chat and the questions and answers. Awesome. Then I can continue. So now I want to talk a little more about our second project that we have, one of our second projects here that we're doing, that is creating this math schoolyard games. So still with this idea of, and this is in collaboration with teachers now in the school setting, and still with this idea of redesigning, oh, sorry, now I do see a few questions that I will address from the other project. So how long have you been doing this project? It has been, we are in our 4th year. So in our 1st and 2nd year, we really focus on the 1st year, those co-design sessions with parents and really learning about them and designing together. The 2nd year, we started to move forward some of the design ideas. So we had plenty, and then collectively chose which ones to decide on. And then that went to the 2nd year and refinement process. And then the 3rd and 4th has been more on the fabrication, but still getting in touch with families. And we have engaged families in the research process too, as they have been being part of doing surveying community members about those community spaces where the installations will be. And we are currently, we hope to be installing some of these things in the summer and the fall of this year. But it is a 4-year process that we have done so far. And the question of the day idea. Yes, so you can have different formats. You can have them to, you can take it with them and then drop it off later. Or if they're dropping them kids in the classroom, you may have maybe like a chart about what kind of, for example, modes of transportation they're using, and then they can have different. They can, do like a tally, and you're learning about them, or just a quick question where they can add it, post it in the classroom itself. Thank you for those questions. Coming back to the schoolyard games. So just here, we're still really working with this idea of redesigning physical spaces for play. And, we have a lot of concrete space in schools. We have some courts, and how can we merge math learning with play and physical education too, whether it be playful activities or through sports as well. And to look something more like this. That project was specifically focused on fractions, so that's why you see different arcs on the basketball court, but really it's still working with this idea of redesigning and merging play and math learning together. And here, this has been a project collaborating with Latine teachers from the Santa Ana Unified School District, where we also have done co-design sessions and play testing. And we have focused on the game format, what might be the base game format, thinking about TK through 2nd grade students, really thinking about active game roles for the games that we are creating that are there so that kids are hands-on and minds-on, and as well as what are some guides and materials that we can create for teachers that are scalable. And some of the key insights that we have learned from that process from teachers is that they appreciate schoolyards games that are really focused on gross motor skills for the younger children rather than more refined skills, as well as really using manipulatives in the context of schoolyard games. So it's a good combination because it also matches what they're doing in the classroom. And we use number lines in the games. I'll talk a little more about that, but it's the use of the number line and how that really connects, can then connect the strategies that they're using on the number line in the classroom with the strategies that they're using on the court, on the schoolyard. So just to give a better idea of what these games look like, here is the soccer number ball court redesign. So we have, and so we landed on the idea of soccer, and this is something that the teachers propose because it's something that is interesting to their students. They mentioned being equally interesting to boys or to girls, or both being able to engage, and it's something that it's a familiar and popular sport in their community. We had initially done basketball, so it worked for subgroups of students, but not for all students, because it was a little bit harder. So that's how we moved towards the soccer version of the number ball games. But here we see we have different rectangles on the court, and based on where kids score from, that's how many points they get. So they might get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 points. And then we have a walkable number line. So kids are able to walk the number line to keep track of their score. And they also use they help in terms of beanbags to be able to continue with the counting and the tracking. And here, this is one of the areas we use for play testing, but on the back, you can see that there is a soccer net, and it has a plus sign on it. So it's focusing on addition, but sometimes we do subtraction instead. So that instead of being plus, you'll see a minus on it. So this is the format, this is the chord, and the games have different, it's the math is embedded on them, but they have different goals slightly, but there are playing teams of 4 and modifications can be made, but of four players, and each has a different job. So we have the kicker who's trying to score. Then we have the announcer. The announcer, if the kicker score, says how many points it's worth, that kick the shot. And then we have the counter who's doing the math out loud on the walkable number line and keeping track. And we have the checker who's doing something similar, but is doing that in a with a Lego number line, using a Lego number line. Sorry, I do see a question. Oh, is there any hopes to explore these projects with other cities in California? We hope so. We not for the soccer number ball version yet, but with fraction ball, which is working with older children with fractions, we are going to Linwood Unified School District. So we are hoping to expand as we continue to learn more and to refine and make better these games. But sorry, I just saw that question. But coming back here, yes, so those are like the games that we have, and want to talk a little more about supporting math learning and how they are aligned with the math Common Core standards. And this is something that working with the teachers, we made sure that there was that alignment. So as I was talking, the games are focusing in addition within 30, so starting 0 to 30, but also sometimes we do subtraction. And some of the games focus on plus and minus. So that means that we are doing both at the same time, adding and subtracting. So really understanding that relationship between those two. And there's also, for the older kids for 1st and 2nd grade, we do add zeros into the number. So instead of working with the base of 1, we work with base of 10s. And we have a couple of add-ons to the elements of the games. You know, at the beginning, we review the numbers, we review the number line, focusing on identification with the TK kids. We do more identification of those numbers, the counting sequence. We also do comparison of team scores, calculating differences, and we have different drills where kids can think about what 2 numbers would give you a specific score. So it's about the composition of those. And we have a couple such as like supercharged points with the 2nd graders, where if they score, like they could get double the points. So thinking about those doubling in those in base of 2s. So here, this is also thinking about motivation and supporting math motivation. We have done observations of a subset of students as we have done our last study, and with 20 of them while they were playing the games to evaluate their engagement and their affect. And what we're seeing is that engagement and classifying them, we do observations of 10 minutes and classifying them as either clearly engaged, probably engaged, or clearly not engaged. And we only see a few that are clearly not engaged. And I do think engagement with this specific games, it's a little bit smaller for the younger kiddos with TK. So also thinking about other possible modifications, but we do see that overall clearly engaged and probably engagement is high. Clearly engaged is like really they're on tags, they're paying attention, they're switching roles, they're doing the job of the role, they're motivated, they show a lot of like eagerness to participate, and probably engaged, there's still that happening, but there might be a few moments of disengagement or looking around more. But in affect as well, we classify as positive, neutral, or negative, and we see that generally kids are showing positive emotions. They do cheering, they do jumping, sometimes they hug when the team wins, or they do some dancing, some of the things we're seeing. And they're also supporting each other. So the checkers, or when there are 3 kids on the Lego number line, for example, based for 3 teams, they start helping each other as well as on the number line. So some of the things we are seeing. Just gonna check. And here I have a small, a little clip just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So please let me know if the audio should work, but let me know if that's not the case. So what is happening here, it's actually, it's in Spanish. A lot of the games were facilitated in Spanish. So they score 7 points. And then there's the counter on the walkable number line, who's doing the addition, engaging on that part. We also have the checker on the Lego number line on the side, who's doing that. And then the team actually passes the other team. So that's why they get really excited after that. But yeah, just it's a small clip or preview of what that looks like. There we go. So just thinking about possible adaptations. I know these are beautiful chords with the painted and the different colors into it, but we have also used chalk and tape for play testing that has worked very well. So these are definitely things that you can do in your schoolyard that with a few materials. And some possible adaptations for younger children is that we can have the scoring area be shorter. If maybe 0 to 10 might be too big, or 1 to 10. So focusing on smaller numbers. Also, we can work on different number lines based on what they're being introduced, what they're seeing in the classroom or in other contexts. 0 to 10, 0 to 20, be increasing as they keep learning more or working with higher numbers. Also, other game formats. So maybe if soccer, it's a little bit harder for the TK or younger kids. Maybe they can do rolling balls. They can be throwing big bags or racing. They were loving when we were doing racing embedded within the game for identifying numbers. So that's something that you can also work with. And for older children, working with different bases, instead of ones, working with base of 10s or 100, increasing, and also potentially adding different colors of balls or just some sort of modifications to it that you can have adaptations that are also involving multiplication, for example. So just some ideas, some suggestions as to how this might be implemented with a few modifications too. So now I just wanted to share also a little bit about why our focus on number lines, and also some of the other research that has for math games in early childhood. So number lines in math learning, we see that this is very helpful for the spatial representation of numbers. So children are able to see the relative position of numbers and understand the concept of distance between numbers. For example, that 3 is closer to 2 than it is to 8, or the distance between 0 and 5 might be the same as the distance between 5 and 10. So this is really helpful for them to be able to see it. At the same time, it really helps with the magnitude of numbers. And the number line can help children easily compare which numbers are larger or smaller, and understand concepts like more or less as well. And helping them map quantities and perform addition and subtraction. And this children's ability to estimate the position of numbers on the blank number line, it's really relates to their math achievement. So a lot of the focus on number lines is because we see that connection between their performance on this estimation ability with a math achievement, and concurrently, and also in later. So some of other work that has used, and actually this is building from that work, the schoolyard games, is the work that has happened with linear number-based board games. So the work by Circular and Ramani, focusing on this board game that has the number line 1 to 10, and really this is something they can do in the classroom. They can also do at home. And from that, other researchers have also done some suggestions or some tips for parents that they have sent home together with printed versions of this, or just easy mock-ups that they're able to create, and playing with dice and having here to focus on what to teach, when to teach it, how to teach it. So children like Bright did this, and they see impacts on students' math learning in the classroom, and also when they send it to play with parents at that home. And some other math games that I might consider incorporating or being part of it. We have dominoes, for example, can help children with counting as they count the dots on the dominoes, also helping them recognize quantities, and which with practice can lead to them quickly recognizing quantities without having to count. So they can also match numbers. And with older children, there can be different adaptations, including games, addition, for example, including games how maybe seeing how different pairs of numbers can add up to the same quantity. And also in the literature and the research of early math, we see a lot of card games as being part of being similar, developing similar skills. And for example, in one game, children can flip their cards, and the one with the highest quantity gets to keep the card. And at the end, the child with the most cards is the winner, and kids really love it. So some of the other examples from the literature related to the number line, but also more generally other games that can be implemented at home or in the classroom. So the last kind of final, sorry, before we move on, any questions about the second project or the research on number line? Might take one or two few before this last section. No, monitor the chat. If no questions, and there's also a question in answer section later today. Is this going to be across all school districts? I really hope that would be the case, not currently, but that would be amazing. And that's something that we are working to. We're sort of in this pilot test, we're testing the concept, and we're seeing that it's working, but we do want to expand. And for Numberball, also, we want to complement with classroom activities. So that is our next step for the project, and then thinking about scaling to more schools. Thank you. So now really thinking of creating your own playful learning experiences in your home, in your classroom, or your research, the approach, and bringing back those guiding playful learning principles, the 3-part formula that we were discussing at the beginning, based on how children learn, what children learn, and the community engagement part. And some suggestions as to how might you start really thinking about, what do I know about the children and their families? What are the interests? What are their practices? If maybe we don't know much about them, then how might I gather new information? We really work with how might we kind of questions. So really thinking about, in some of the strategies that were shared earlier, in terms of how can you get that information to build from it. And then thinking about what are the desired learning goals that you want to implement. So that content, that's C, right? Of what children learning, thinking about those, and then the combination comes. So now that you know what do you know about families, and thinking about what you know about families and the learning goals, how can you merge them together? So how might we design games or playful activities that build from families' engagement and include the learning goals that you're interested in? But we also have the other C's. So then you start thinking about what are the other skills that you want to be focusing on and emphasizing. And then we typically go into more refinement process. So we have certain ideas. We have kind of start putting some thoughts together, and then some designs as to what that might look like. And then we start assessing it. Is it joyful? If it is, but maybe not so much, how might we make it more joyful? And then same on for the other principles, right? How might we make it more active? How might we make it more socially interactive? And so on and so on. And the goal is not to have represented all of these design principles, but it is to be more intentional about them, and to also have as many as we can possible. Sorry, do you see a question about the slides. Yes, the slides are on the resources tab. I believe it might be down. You can see them there. And also in the resources, I do have like one document with some guiding tools. So when we're thinking about the 60 skills, welcome. And when we're thinking about different levels, right? So we have these different skills that we want to for kids to develop, and for playful activities to be conducive to facilitate those skills. There's different levels to those. So starting with 1 being, and then 4 going on to the deepest one. So you might start with 1 and then start building up, or depending where your children are at, might be different. But this is some guiding tools for you to use and to think through as you're kind of designing these experiences, if this is a model that you think might work with you, for you. And then here we have the guiding tool for the characteristics as well. So thinking here about, right, they're active, not passive, engaging, not distracting, meaningful, not disconnected, social interactive, not solo, iterative, not repetitive, and joyful, not boring. So that information is there, and it does go more deeper into what those different levels would be. So in the resources tab, you can see that document if this is something you're interested in. And this built all from the work of, again, Hirsch-Pasek and Donegoff, as well as Solch and others collaborators. And you can see the references there too.